And welcome back to the 15th episode of Tiny Table Talk. I am Jon,
And De Yang.
and today we're going to go through a new Magickal mastery. So, we have went through the past, how many weeks now? 9 weeks? 9 weeks of different masteries, covering different martial, magical, and specialist masteries. And today we'll be covering our fourth and very last magical mastery, which is the Arcane. So this one, right? Before we jump right into it, let's talk a little bit. What exactly is the Arcane Mastery, and how is this different from all of our other magical masteries, and why is this like its own thing?
So, we have went through the different how do I say? Usually, magic is divided into multiple elemental and types like that. So the arcane is meant to be like the pure magical energy, the representation of pure magical energy, and it is relatively similar to other like magic types, but the focus here will be like pure rage kind of energy magic. Yeah.
If I had to put it in a way, it's more like a pure mana control, as opposed to elemental magic, which is kind of like mana that has been converted into a form of element already, right? So it's been given an aspect, right? If you think about it in a Final Fantasy sense, it's aspected magic. So today we'll be covering Arcane Mastery, and in the Arcane Mastery we'll be covering the descriptions as always, along with all of the skills and the information. We won't spend as long on all of the information today because there's quite a few sort of like sub skills and sub reliance for things like minions and enchantments and things like that. So we will speed through those a little bit faster than usual just to keep in time, right? So today we'll be having the Arcane Mastery, and then there'll be the descriptions as always. So this is a small version. Let's jump over to the big one, which is here. So this is a snippet from the rulebook, and the rulebook is something that is part of the basic set. It's a 64-page rulebook, and it will include all of the current masteries that we have covered with 5 skills each, and everything you need to play a short level 1 to 5 adventure, right? And so the Arcane Mastery, so we just cover like what it is, the 5 skills, and here are some examples of what you could play in Aeons of Adventure as an Arcane Mastery player, right? So manipulate raw mystical energy from the arcane currents of Corinthia. So Corinthia is the core setting of Aeons of Adventure, and wield spells of force and illusion, crafting glyphs, or hurling bolts of pure mana from afar. Mastery in Arcane is all about affinity and scaling your magical prowess alongside it as you grow. Skills like Arcane Ball increase in numbers as your affinity, which is our equivalent for wisdom and intelligence as an attribute, grows, the stat itself grows, along with the number of targets you can imbue with mana imbue and a bunch of other skills, right? So the core attribute of Arcane is affinity, and it requires a focus to be equipped. So as always, all of the magical masteries require they require something. So it doesn't have to be a focus. Sometimes it's a weapon in Radiant's case, and the attribute is determined not by the weapon, but rather by the magical mastery. So for comparison, the martial mastery uses a weapon, and the weapon determines the attribute. And here, Arcane, as the magical mastery, uses affinity. Right. So Arcane has a choice node at rank 1. Right. So you have 0, 1, 1. So on the second rank, you get to choose, and then rank 2, rank 3. Right. So examples of mastery combinations of the Arcane. So as always, these are examples, these are suggestions, these are not things that you have to play, they are not classes, right? These are just ways that you can combine the different masteries to form something that might be interesting to you, right? So clad in, the first one is the Arcanist, right? So clad in flowing robes and a staff in hand, right? Exactly like me, right? Sling bolts of pure energy as a master of the Arcane. So this is your traditional wizard. If you're familiar with like things like World of Warcraft, this will be your arcane mage. In D&D, this will be your normal ass wizard, right? Or actually, it's kind of more like a warlock if you think about it, because you're spamming Eldritch Blast, right? And the second one, which is a little bit more unique, also influenced by our good friends at World of Warcraft, is the Spellbreaker, right? So this is an arcane shield and heavy armor mastery combination, right? Deny other mages of their spells as an aegis against magic. So this is something that I think is pretty much only available in Aeons of Adventure. I think this is even even in World of Warcraft, where this concept
don't
originate
need-
from,
yeah.
you can't play
Can't
this
play it,
concept,
yeah.
right? So this is a class fantasy that is something that is rarely achievable. So there's like a shield wielding heavy armor arcane mage, right? So you deny other mages of their spells as an against their magic, but how, right? There are many ways you can do so. If you have already seen our Sentinel Mastery, you might have noticed that there are certain things like payback and ballistic defense that would help you against other forms of spells, projectiles, and range things, right? Wearing heavy armor, of course, comes with the benefits of having armor, right? But how does Arcane deny other spells? Right, so there are a bunch of spells later that we'll go through a different list, and you'll see how that can happen, right? So anything else you'd like to add on to the base of Arcane Mastery before I proceed into the skills?
Yeah, so Arcane is pretty. I think it's one of the clearest and easiest concept of magic for a new player to understand lah. Because it's essentially what you think of as magic, and not like certain things like Radiance, where it's a bit more complex in that it's expected in like what you mentioned. It's more like altered lah. So Arcane is very pure in that sense. Yeah. So it's and with that comes with the benefit of it being a bit more varied in the fantasy of it lah. So it's a bit more. It's not as focused as like for example for Radiance, where it's healing. Like there's a certain mindset or fantasy that is usually tied to it. Yeah. Because Arcane is pretty not used. Yeah.
Yes. I worked so hard that I grew this beard just for this mastery. All right. Yeah. Arcane Mastery, I think, is one of the most diverse of all of our masteries, right? So, like, I think for Fire, for Frost, for Radiance, you can kind of see like a true line is exactly what it's trying to be. But when it comes to Arcane has this sort of like widespread, varied utility, a little bit of damage here, a little bit of like minions here, enchantment
It's
there.
like it is the fundamental. If you can treat it as the fundamental of all the other magic. So it's a bit more jack of all trades kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, you can think of it as the traditional wizard, but not in the sense that you get to keep a bunch of spells, but in the sense that it is like a
You have many choice notes.
correct. It's like a Swiss Army
Yeah,
knife, right?
yeah.
Okay, let's jump on to our very first skill. So skill number 1, and as always, we have a card here that is meant to give sort of like a representation of what a card or a skill looks like. Of course, this card below is not the skill above. This is for a separate spell we will talk about later. But it's just showing that, okay, like the top left corner, you have the top left corner is
Subway.
this way. Yes, this way, right? That's the spell type, the skill type. So that is a spell, right? And then the top right corner is the cost, right? In this case, it's a little bit special. Names at the top, text right below it, and then the effects are all below, right? And the learning cost is all the way at the bottom. So let's take a look at the very first skill, which is Arcane Bolts, right? So Arcane Bolts is, I think, if you have played just about any fantasy wizard mage thing, you kind of like have an idea of what Arcane Bolts is. But let's take a look at our take on Arcane Bolts.
So Arcane Bolts here, right, I'll actually skip all the way straight into what it actually does here. So that it's easier to understand.
Yep.
So what Arcane Bolt does here is you shoot up to 1+ affinity bolts range at up to 120 feet, and it's a spell strike that does 3 arcane damage, and all bolts uses the same roll. And since this is a spell strike, right, specifically strike, it has the benefits of having the single 6 and double 6, which is great success and critical success.
Yep.
And for great success is every single bolt that you have shot, right, deals additional 1 arcane, and for critical success, it's the same. So to break this down even more is shoot up to 1+ affinity. So what does that mean is actually you basically shoot 1+ affinity. So for example at level 0, when you first create a character, you can gain up to a +2 bonus. Right. So this means that you're shooting up to 3 bolts at level 0, at level 1. Right. And for all bolts uses the same roll, it means what it is lah. Correct. So that means you just need to roll once, and you can efficiently get all the damage out already.
Right.
Yeah.
So when it says shoot up to 1+ affinity balls, that means that as I grow smarter, as my affinity increases, the number of bolts increases rather than the damage.
Correct.
Right. So in a sense, this is multiple hits. It doesn't scale in the same vector as most of the other abilities do, which is usually they just get more powerful. But when it comes to affinity, you'll come to find that in the Arcane Mastery, a few skills scale directly with the number of affinity you have. So this is definitely not a mastery you want to pick up if you do not have affinity.
Or negative.
Right, especially if it's negative. If you can imagine, right, if it's negative, you have 1 minus 1. So you literally fire 0 bolts if you have no affinity.
Right.
So this is a mastery where you want affinity, right? If you don't, I don't know why you're learning this. You're not meant to be a wizard if you do not have affinity. All right. So yes, it's a strike, and Aeons of Adventure is a 2d6 game. So there's a core resolution system. You roll 2d6, you add the numbers together, you add a core attribute, and as long as it beats the target number, you will succeed. Right? And so a strike means that you are rolling to attack someone and you are rolling against their evasion. Right? In this case, when you roll, if one of the two d6s is a 6, and you succeed, you get the second effect added on. And if the second d6 is a 6, then you get a third effect added on. So it's all cumulative, right? So in total, what this means is that Arcane Bolts is just your typical fantasy of like, okay, I'm going to fire a bunch of bolts and it flies over there. And as I grow smarter, I get more and more and more bolts. So this reaches about like, I think our current cap is 4 bolts.
4 bolts.
Right, so it's 1 plus 3.
Yeah, 1 plus 3. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have 4 bolts, right? So every single attack you fire 4 bolts. They do 3 damage each. There are other ways to scale it. We'll talk about that later. But you fire 4 bolts. And if you roll a 6, it's 4 damage. If you roll 2 6s, it's 5 damage. Right? So it's a very standard multi-hit clearance kind of skill that hits many, many small targets. Or you could target the very same target. Can you have a negative affinity? Yes, you can. The lowest you can go is -1.
Correct.
Which means that if you have 1 plus -1, you have 0. Right? So you are literally shooting 0 bolts if you have no affinity. It's not wise, right? Not wise. Okay, so Arcane Bolt. It's your rank 0 skill, the very first skill you'll pick up when you begin your journey into being a wizard. Right? So let's go on to the second skill, which is Mana Imbue. So Mana Imbue, have we gone through imbues before? Or is this the first imbue?
I think fire.
That's enchant, right?
Enchant,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
Mana Imbue is the very first imbuement skill that we are covering in Aeons of Adventure, right? Mana Imbue, as you might imagine, is an imbue spell, right? So what exactly is an imbue spell?
So imbue spells here are what we classify boon skills that is temporary. Correct. So on the flip side, you have enchants, which is boon spells that is perm. Correct. So for imbue, they typically comes with a duration, either a duration or a trigger, and they are usually able to be used on multiple people. Right. So unlike enchant where it's a single target and there's no expiry outside of death. Right. Yeah. So that's the key difference between imbue and enchant here. Yeah. So what is mana imbue? So mana imbue is you imbue a weapon within 60 feet with mana with the boon called mana imbue for 1 minute. So that is 10 rounds.
10 rounds.
That's
Yes.
right. Yes.
So each round in combat is 6 seconds, similar to D&D.
Right. Then you can have up to 1 plus affinity. So you see the trend here. Weapons imbued with this spell at any point in time. So what is the actual boon then? So the actual boon, right, is weapon strikes with the weapon that has been imbued, right? Deals 2 additional deal plus 2 arcane damage.
Yep.
Then if you are using the weapon and you cast an arcane bolt,
such as your focus.
Correct.
So you can imbue your focus, right?
Correct. Then it deals 1 plus 1 arcane damage as well. And mana imbue expires after you have cast 3 arcane bolts or you have made 3 weapon strikes.
So basically, once you have triggered its effect 3 times, right? So Mana Imbue, it's meant to kind of like represent that fantasy of a quick buff to all of your allies. So it's like buffing all of their weapons, right? But the caveat here is within 60 feet, right? Yes, it would be really weird if someone just has like -1 affinity and you have a bunch of arcane skills that you can't do anything with. But I mean, there's always that idea where like, okay, you start at -1 and then eventually you maybe you get a +1 set, right? And then you get 1 cast of it, right? That is a there's a growth arc to be had there, right? So yes, mana imbue, the fantasy is, yes, I'm going to enchant all of my allies, right? They're all fighting in the front lines, or maybe in the back line, you can enchant bows as well. You can enchant your fellow staff members, your fellow members who are using focuses of all kind, right? Imbue their weapons within 60 feet with mana imbue for a minute, and then they get a buff, right? This buff being mana imbued, right? So in AoA, when you have an imbue card that is stated in this exact manner, usually the mana imbued will actually be a separate card that you can give to whoever receives the imbue so that they can refer to the card as well, right? And this allows them to better remember that, hey, my attack and my skill has been imbued before, right? And that there's an additional bonus effect that is to be had there, right? So in this case, the bonus effect is that weapon strikes with the weapon, right, deal +2 arcane damage. So just raw damage. It just deals more damage, right? And the special effect for the arcane mage is that each bolt with the previous skill, arcane bolts, also deals an additional 1 arcane damage. So with multiple bolts, dealing +1 each is really, really effective. And if you have high amounts of affinity, you can start to see where this is going, right? Yep, so after casting 3 arcane bolts or making 3 weapon strikes, this effect ends. And this is a trend that you'll see with imbues, even though right now there aren't many imbues. But with imbues, they're typically going to end after the condition goes off or in a set amount of time or after turns, right? As opposed to enchantments, which can last basically forever, right? So it's a simple skill, I think. Mana imbue, pretty straightforward, but it is a utility skill that is not available to a lot of other classes, right? Or other masteries, right?
It's also, I think it's also one of the, I mean, like what I mentioned, it's one of the few imbues out there. And also, it's one of those few skills that actually buff others in that sense. In a more direct matter.
Yep.
So we are not talking about like inspiration where it's like, oh, I give you additional dices or like I debuff the guy, stuff like that. It's more of like, it's very straightforward.
Yeah, one of the only buffs in the basic set where you directly buff an ally to deal more damage. Right, and it comes with a bunch of conditions, right? You have 60 feet, number of things, skill to affinity, but it is powerful because it's a multiplier. If you hit multiple times, it scales up, right? Yes, it very much has a sort of like a JRPG and a MMO influence to this, right? Personally, we play a lot of MMOs, right? Especially the major ones, like the currently popular ones.
The 3 big ones.
Yeah, the 3 big ones, which are Final Fantasy, World of Warcraft, and Guild Wars. Right, so those are major influences and are designed for Aeons of Adventure, right? You can probably tell our actual age from that. Okay, let's go on to the third skill. Another really long passage here. Another 2-part skill, right? So this is Summon Mana Bond. So first we've had Arcane Bolts, right? And then second is like we enchant our allies with different spells. And now suddenly, hey, I'm going to summon a golem to help me shoot more arcane bolts, right? So what exactly does Summon Mana Bond do?
So first of all, this is also a level 1 skill, similar to Mana Imbue. So this means this is your second skill that you can pick up in the Arcane Skill Tree, Mastery Tree.
Yep. So this is a choice node, or you can pick up both.
Correct. So what it does is actually you summon one mana bound within 120 feet of you for 1 minute. Then this mana, the mana bound disappears after using 1 plus affinity stamina. You can only have 1 summon at any point in time. Okay. So what the mana bound is, right? It's actually a minion. So this stat block would be quite familiar if you've seen our
Beast.
Yes,
the Beast Mastery.
So stats, stuff like that. Okay. So but I'll just skip straight to the what it actually does. So what it actually does is the basic attack is 1 stamina. So it shoots a bolt that is ranged 120 feet. It's also a spell strike that deals 5 arcane damage. Then for a great success, it will do each bolt deals additional 2 damage, 2 arcane damage, and for the critical success, it fires another bolt. So if you link all of this together, and it's on the base, right, it has 1 stamina, correct? So this means the mana bound can use this skill every turn, correct? And this is not your stamina, first of all. This is the mana bound stamina. So this means you have more arcane bolts.
Yes. So minions in Aeons of Adventure have their own stamina pool. So they kind of act as if they were their own characters, right? And they're controlled by whoever owns this minion. Typically, we don't have many minions. You can't have many minions out at the same time. There's no like summon flock of woodland creatures here, right? You only have one creature out at a time, right? So you'll find that traditionally, when it comes to minion skills in Aeons of Adventure, there's usually a cap. There's a cap somewhere. Right. And in this case, the cap is written right there in the summon skill itself. It says you can only have one mana bound summon at any point in time. So you can imagine this mana bound is kind of like a mana elemental that kind of like falls out from the ground and it starts shooting beams. But you might notice it has 0 movement speed. So this is a turret in a sense, right? It can't move. It's there just to fire bolts until it runs out of energy, right? However, it is a minion, which means that minion things do work on it. Commands, buffs to your allies, all of those things do function. And as same with the trend for the past 2 skills, you see that it scales to affinity. So the smarter you are, the longer your mana bound lasts, right? Because you can use more attacks. So in this case, you summon the mana bound within 120 feet of you. So within 120 feet of you, you just sprout this turret, this elemental of mana, right, for up to a minute. So same thing, 10 rounds, and you can shoot bolts. So within these 10 rounds, you can shoot bolts that is equivalent to 1 plus affinity.
Kind of, yeah, shaman totems.
Shaman totems. It's a bit, well, yes, it is kind of like the shaman totem, but the main influence is actually the water elemental from Cold Mage, right? So we really wanted like this whole concept of like a frost, but it's not frost, right? It's a mana elemental golem thing.
The initial one, right, was actually a totem, but it's from Dota.
Right. I mean,
the serpent totem thing.
Dota is,
but yeah.
The serpent Dota is the troll shaman, right? Yeah. So the troll shaman, yes, in a sense, it is a mana bound. And if you do like that flavor, you could flavor the mana bound as this kind of like shamanistic totem, right? That is conjuring and firing arcane bolts. And what you think is arcane in your world could be the color of the totem, right? So in this case, in our version, arcane's purple, right? So if you've seen the picture, yes, arcane magic, all of the good stuff, it's all purple magic, right? So raw mana is purple, and from the damage number, you can see that the color is also purple, which represents arcane damage, by the way, right? So there are damage types in Aeons of Adventure. So for the mana bound itself, this is basically a compressed stat block, right? It's a stat block that's going to be on a little card. Wait, hold up. I have a card here.
So similar to
So the card's about this size, right? So you can see my hand. This is a traditional MTG size card, right? And all of the stats of your minion is going to be on this card, right? And you also notice that the stats on your minions don't scale as you level up. So there is kind of like a cap to the power level here, right? If you want to balance your encounters around these things, right? So with the stat block, it also comes with a single basic attack, and every single minion stat block comes with a single basic attack. And maybe certain passives, but in this case, just a basic attack, which is shoot this range bolt, which is quite similar to your own arcane bolt, right? It even has the same term bolt, which is a projectile. It's a ranged projectile, and it deals 5 damage. It does a little bit more damage than the actual wizard itself, right? But it does fewer bolts.
Yes.
Right? So yes, if you do crit, you fire 2 bolts, which does not count as an additional attack. It's an additional hit. All right. And so that is Summon Mana Bound. Is there anything else you want to add here before we move on to the next more complex skill?
Nothing. So like what you mentioned, this is just a very easy to understand. It's basically a sitting turret.
Yes, it is a turret.
Its main job is just to shoot bolts.
Right.
Stop. Right. It does nothing more, it does nothing less.
Because sometimes if you're a wizard, right, you need to summon your totem and you need to run around, right? Like, you need to be doing things here, buffing your allies there, controlling the scene while your elemental golem is firing bolts and distracting the enemies.
And you can do that at level 3 because the summon mana bound costs 2 stamina points and the mana build costs 1 already.
That's right.
Yeah, so you could do...
You could do this really early.
You could do this really early.
Yeah, you could do this really early. Like right off the gate, if you want to pick up Arcane Mastery and spend all your points into it, you can go straight for this. Right. So let's go on to the 4th skill, which is a bit more unique. I think this is the one of its kind that is only available to the Arcane Mage.
Yeah. Okay, it will be a kind of unique. I might change this in the future, but currently is unique to Arcane only.
Yes.
like type of skill lah. So what is it's called the glyph of storing lah, right? So what it actually does is you enchant one item you can touch with a glyph that absorbs the next spell that hits it. So remember just now we were talking about Spellbreaker?
Touch.
Yes. So you can use this spell again to cast the absorb spell using its spellcasting modifier, consuming the enchantment. Right. So to put it into combat perspective, what it means is you will basically touch an item. So what an item means, right, is your weapon, your armor, and it does not need to be yours.
It could be any item.
It could be anyone. That includes the enemies.
So you want to touch a door, you want to touch the enemy, you want to touch his hair, anything, right?
And it will absorb the next spell. It does not say, it does not mention is it a hostile attack or what. It just say the next spell.
Okay, correct. Okay.
So the next spell that hits it lah. So yeah, correct.
That's
then you can use this spell. So the Glyph of Storing again to cast the absorb spell. So what that means is, so if we take for example we were to use Arcane Bolt, right? Arcane Bolts fire into the Glyph of Storing. You can then later trigger it again using the Glyph of Storing to fire off the Arcane Bolts.
Good night, Vindicta. Thanks for joining for the stream. You can catch the rest of the stream and VOD that will be released soon, after the stream. Alright, take care.
Yeah. Then you consume the enchantment. So the enchantment here is the Glyph of Storing lah.
Right. So just now we mentioned, as you mentioned, just now we mentioned enchantments as opposed to imbues. So enchantments are things that last indefinitely. These are things that, unless triggered, you basically will never, you'll never disappear, right? Unless either the caster dies, the item is destroyed, or the thing is triggered. So in this case, yes, I can enchant any item I want, right? So I can just boop, I've enchanted this card.
There is also a base level enchantment rule, which is you can only enchant an item can only be enchanted once.
That's right.
And the newest enchant will remove the previous one.
That's right.
So that is something that you have to take note lah. So if, for example, if you went through our fire mastery, right, you have seen the flame enchant. So if your weapon has already been enchanted with the flame enchant and you try to use the Glyph of Storing, the Glyph of Storing will overwrite it. Alright. Yeah.
So you gotta be careful.
Those are things that is unique to enchantment. However, you could do an enchantment and an imbuement at the same time. That is okay.
Yep. Yeah. Because these are different things. They come with their own different limits, and this will be covered in the glossary within our rules. So the number of maximum limits for enchants, for imbues, and all those kind of things. Because I don't expect everybody to remember these things. We have a quick reference sheet for you to look at while you're playing. It's a really small sheet. It's the exact same size as a character sheet, which is A5, right? Because we want to keep things small and portable. So yeah, you can enchant, you can touch. It'll replace any enchantments if it already has one. And if not, it will enchant this one item with an enchantment, which is the glyph, right? This glyph absorbs the next spell that hits it. So what that means is, like, you could put this glyph on like a shield or maybe on your clothing, right? And a spell hits you and it would absorb whatever this spell is. This could be a fireball, this could be an arcane bolt, this could be someone trying to summon a mana bound on you, right? And instead of it triggering, it absorbs it. It denies the spell.
Okay, I think the best example here will be we use the frost the frost skills. So the frost wall is one of them. So if you are standing at the enemy cast frost wall on you and you have the Glyph of Storing, right, that frost wall does not appear because it has been absorbed.
Or rather, while it is appearing and it hits whatever had the glyph, it will disappear and get absorbed into it.
Correct. So the final answer, the final result to that will be the wall does not appear.
Yep. Yeah. Right. So it's absorbed. And then what happens next is you can use this spell again.
On him.
Yes. But you have to spend the same stamina cost. So you have to spend the stamina cost that was spent for the glyph, which is 2 SP. So if you absorb a spell that was less than, it's 2 SP.
No, you use this spell. Correct. So it's
to cast, exactly. So you cast the Glyph of Storing again to release the spell. So if you have absorbed a 1-cost spell, then you still have to spend 2 SP to release it. But if you absorb a 3 SP cost spell, you still spend 2 SP to release it. So ideally you would absorb high cost spells, right? That would be the wise thing to do. However, you can never really determine exactly what's going to happen in the in the midst of combat, right? But this is where it starts to show like what is this spellbreaker kind of concept that is available to the arcane mage, which is you can enchant different things to absorb magic away from other mages and then recast it back against them, right? There are many applications to this, many possible applications. A lot of things are considered spells in Aeons of Adventure because the world is a very magical world, right? Many attacks from elementals and monsters are considered spells, right? So be creative. Yep. And with that, you will use its spellcasting attribute. So if it's using if they use a radiant spell, you would have to use charm. And if you don't have charm, perhaps it's not the wisest to use, right? So yes, it will consume the enchantment, and that is exactly what the glyph of storing is. I mean, it's in the name, right? It stores a spell, right? So let's move on to the very last skill. So the fifth skill will solidify the kind of like identity of the arcane mage, which is spell thief. You are a master of controlling raw magic, raw mana, arcane magic, right? What does that look like, right? How does that culminate into sort of like a signature skill? And the signature skill here is spell thief, which is exactly the card that is at the bottom right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, no,
this way. Yes, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. So what spell thief is so you will react. So react is actually it's not a standard thing. React is reaction in D&D where it's a trigger of something lah. So in here the trigger is right when a creature within 120 feet casts a spell, you can react and use spell thief, right, to contest it. So
okay.
When you contest it, right, you will use the respective spellcasting modified attributes of the casters, and if you win, the spell basically is yours, and you can immediately cast it as if it's your own. Right? So this is I think this is the most unique skill in Aeons of Adventure that we are releasing so far. In that, first of all, it is the only skill that has no SP cost, like immediate SP cost, right? And it's also something that is a very anime looking fight.
I think the more appropriate way to put it is that it has no fixed SP cost.
Correct.
Right. So the XP cost is X right there. Right. So it's meant to represent that X is the SP cost of the spell you're trying to steal. Right. So if you're trying to steal 1 SP cost spell, then yeah, it is 1 SP cost. If you're trying to steal a 3 SP cost spell, then it would be a 3 SP cost. Right. So what exactly does this look like in the midst of battle? Right. You can imagine someone is trying to cast off. Maybe they're trying to cast like
fireball.
Like a fireball, right? Fireball is a big 3 SP cost spell. It's a big ball, does a big amount of damage, 8 damage to everybody. It's fire damage as well. So it can be very deadly to a lot of people. And then you as the arcane wizard over there, 120 feet away from this guy, right? This guy's fireball is only 60 feet. But you, the arcane wizard, is 120 feet away. And you're like, I will not allow you to cast that spell. Hold! Right? And you react. Right? And when this guy casts a spell, you can contest him. And what does contesting mean is that he's casting fireball, right? So he's using affinity. I am an arcane mage. I use affinity. We are now going to roll off. Right? This is one of the few situations in Aeons of Adventure where 2 players will roll directly against each other. Right? And this is not typical. Usually you just roll once and you just get it over with because we're trying to make things fast. However, for Spell Thief, we made an exception because it's so cool. It's flavor, right? You contest this person with these 2 rolls, and if you succeed, you steal the spell and you cast it as if it were your own, right? So he's casting fireball, you steal the fireball away and you release it back wherever you want to. You might not want to release it back at your allies, obviously, right? You might want to shoot it at another bunch of people. You may want to just shoot it somewhere safe so that you have deflected and denied the spell away from this person, right? So there's a lot of flavor, yes, but it's also there's a lot of like potential stallmating, because as an arcane mage, you're able to deny so much magic, right? As long as you have the stamina cost to do so. So you are spending a turn to deny someone else's turn. However, there's one thing that I haven't really covered yet, which is what happens if you fail? Right? If you fail to steal someone's magic, you still spend the cost, but you don't get to steal anything. You have failed your steal, right? So that means that they continue to cast a spell, and you have just wasted whatever SP you spend trying to steal the spell, right? So it is a high cost, high return sort of thing, and it does enable an arcane mage to have access to more spells than they usually would have, right? So in your typical repertoire, you would have as many spells as mastery points as you might have, depending on your level, of course. But for arcane mages, as long as you're fighting another wizard, there's always this kind of threat of, oh, if I use a spell against an arcane mage, or as long as an arcane mage is in the battle somewhere, he might just and then fire back at you, right? So that's the real threat and kind of identity of being a master of mana, right, and pure magics. So as to any other, let me see, using the so is there anything else you want to add on to the spell in particular?
I think this one is a bit this will be a bit tricky to use because this is, first of all, you say it's a react, right?
Yep.
And second of all, the payoff is really great, but at the same time, the downside of the failing aspect is also very, very big.
That's right.
Correct. Imagine you use this and then you fail and then you get damaged and you do not have any SP left. Right? And that is a very real reality here, right?
It is very possible. Very possible. It is just a roll off at the end of the day.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. And I think outside of that, it's pretty simplified in that sense, but at the same time, it's complex to use. So the skill setting here is pretty high, yeah, I would say. But it will be really interesting to use in combat though. Yeah. Because there is certain spells that is not usable that is not in any mastery right now. So you could also steal those.
Yes,
right?
yes.
That is also a very possibility, as long as it's a spell. Right, that's the keyword here. So I think that is similar to like the Glyph of Storing where it's a spell. It just says it's a spell. It never says like who is it from. You could even steal it from your allies.
Yep. Oh, that is true. That is true. So that is something that it's a synergy that happens with the Glyph of Storing as well as Spell Thief, which is that you can actually store or steal your allies' spells to improve your own repertoire, like increase your own repertoire of spells, right? So it's like you have an ally who casts a heal. He's able to cast a heal. So you may perhaps want to store his Radiant Strike spell onto maybe a rock, right? And you store in a rock and you throw a rock at someone, right? You heal them with your rocks of healing. So that's an example of what you could do with Glyph of Storing and even Spell Thief, right? They may try to cast Radiant Strike at something that might be too far for them to Radiant Strike, right? And you are able to steal the spell and cast it as if it were your own.
Correct.
Right. So there are many interactions that you could do with this thing.
The rock aspect might not be real because we did mention it's an item.
So yeah, I mean the rock is an item.
Consider rock as an item.
And anything is an item, right? It doesn't. I never said weapon or equipment, right? However, Radiant Strike does specify weapon, so yeah, it has to be a weapon in Radiant Strike's term lah. So yep, that is one of the many possibilities that you can have with Spell Thief, Glyph of Storing, and all these kind of different things, right? So as you can see, like Arcane Mastery is definitely more focused on a broad range of skills and utility rather than to hyper focus on like dealing damage or to double down on like multi-hits or like that kind of concept, but rather it fits more into the idea of you being able to weave and control mana and magic rather than to actually just do damage, right? Because that has traditionally been something that wizards in RPGs are more inclined towards, which is that you have things like illusion magic and divination and all that kind of things, which is still covered but not directly in a spell, because when we do skill cards, skill cards have to cover a very specific niche that is able to fit within an effect of a card, and thus we have to be very specific when it comes to the skills that are available to whatever is in a mastery, right? So you might be asking, like, then yeah, what about those illusions? What about those rituals, right? We have a separate mechanic for that, which we'll cover at another time, because it is a full mechanic.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it is a whole thing by itself, right? Perhaps we'll cover it in Behind the Workbench very briefly rather than having a full thing about it. Yeah. So Yep, with that is all of Arcane Mastery. So let's take a look at the entire summary of Arcane Mastery once again. Going back here. So yes, we have had the description just now. Our very first skill, Arcane Bolts, firing more bolts, and the smarter you are, the more bolts you can shoot. And then the second skill, which is Mana Imbue, buffing a weapon within 60 feet to deal more arcane damage. And if you are smarter, you get to buff more weapons, right? And as well as if you were to buff your staff, your arcane bolts do more damage, right? If, for example, if you had like a group of 4 arcane mages and everybody has arcane imbue with each other's staffs, then yes, you all get to fire more and more and more bolts. Well, more and more damage by bolts.
Yeah.
Although, I'm not sure how...
You can't stack the arcane imbue.
Yeah, you wouldn't stack, but everybody would have like buff bolts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, skill number 3, which is summon mana bound. You summon your kind of like turret totem golem elemental thing, right? And it's firing out arcane bolts. Number of hits scaling to your affinity. So the smarter you are, the more shots your turret gets. Skill number 4, which is the glyph of storing. Short description, many applications. Enchant a single item, steal a spell, and then release it again, right? And then skill number 5, which I have to turn off description for, which is spell thief, which is to contest a spell, another spellcaster, and steal their spell and cast it back against them, right? So with that, we've come to the end of what Arcane Mastery is going to offer in the basic set, right? So let's very quickly talk about what are some of the things that we have already seen with Arcane Mastery and the possible combinations that we have had. So as is covered in the description, which is, let me just over here again, description here. So traditionally, I think Arcane Mastery is definitely one of those masteries that is very well suited for just taking on spells, right? Like as a pure arcane mage, that is something that is very much viable. As everything is, all masteries are viable for you to just go and pick just a single mastery down the line with any armor choices that you want. But I think arcane mages are definitely one of the better ones.
Correct, because they're so varied.
Yep.
Right? They offer quite a lot of things. Just taking on the skills, correct? Yeah. So they are one of the better ones in that sense because just flat out because they are not specialized in that sense. Yeah.
But I think it's also because they are kind of specialized in that you would want affinity.
Correct.
Right. So because you're so heavily invested into the affinity attribute, you may not be as easily able to pick up other masteries. It depends. There are possible combinations, and we have seen possible combinations, but generally, it's a bit more difficult. Ideally, you want to pick a mastery that is not as reliant on having a specific attribute at a high number, such as inspiration, right? Because inspiration scales very aggressively with charm.
Correct. You not want to take other skills that is like similar to arcane, where the stat contributes to a lot of the increments here.
Right, or at least if it's a different attribute. Perhaps if it's the same attribute, like another affinity mastery, which is not available in the basic set, it might be viable. Right? So the alternative is picking up a mastery where you don't use a lot of the attributes, such as shields, sentinel, and beasts. Right? I think beast is the main one that is quite
Beast
interesting.
is a very underlying... It's a very unexpected choice in that sense because you will not expect
Arcane Beast
Master.
Right?
Correct. But it works pretty well. The synergy was pretty decent because Mana Bound is a minion. Correct. And it does not state like any other things, it just states a minion. And that means like I think what you mentioned earlier, which is the Beast Mastery, right, has command spells. Command spells affect minion and Mana Bound is a minion. So they are directly affected by that. Yeah.
That's right.
So I think that's one of the few in like fantasy that you cannot even imagine, but you are able to create here.
It's a very unexplored kind of archetype, which is that you are a mage summoning. It's not exactly a summoner. So in a sense, you're summoning your minions, right? And you are commanding them as if you were a beast tamer, essentially, right? So you're a beast tamer of magical summons, rather than summoning your summon to do something and then just leave, right? Which is traditionally what you might have in a Final Fantasy summon, right? Which is that they literally summon the guy to cast a spell and leave. So basically, you have just cast a single spell, right? Not very exciting.
Like through a proxy.
Yeah, like in our opinion, it's not very exciting, right? So what we wanted to achieve was that, okay, like you have this minion, and then you can do minion things to it. You can do minion enchantments, such as Bestial Wrath. So if you don't know about our B skills, go watch the Beast Mastery deep dive. It'll cover all the B skills that we have, and most of them are command skills, which are commanding your minions to do something, right? Or buffing your minions in the case of Bestial Wrath, right? So it buffs a single minion, the minion becomes really big, and then it casts like a bunch of things. It does more damage, it has more health. There's a whole bunch of stuff that benefits minions in particular, and because Mana Bound is a minion, there's that possible combination, right? So you might want to do certain combinations when it comes to masteries, where maybe you take 2 points into Arcane and the rest of it into Beast, or you could balance it around in whatever way you want. And in Aeons of Adventure, you can reallocate your mastery points during a rest, as long as you don't unlearn a mastery, which is the only condition you have. Once you have learned the mastery, you kind of have that mastery under your repertoire forever, right? So once you have learned Arcane, you can't unlearn Arcane. But you can spend less mastery points into Arcane and put it into something else if you like, right? And the other one that was mentioned just now was the Spellbreaker. So now that you have seen the spells, right? Like with Spell Thief, with Glyph of Storing, there's this very real possibility of playing an Arcane tank, right? No one's saying that you have to use range attacks, which you probably would because you have Arcane Bolts. But with that whole concept of like, okay, I'm holding like this staff or like this weapon / focus, right? And I'm holding a shield. You don't, which with Sentinel Mastery, a lot of the power of a shield comes in the first 2 points, right? So you're able to do this thing where you're able to combo your spell casting, you're denying spells, at the same time you can protect your allies, you can shield charge people, and really get into the grid of it and be a true mage slayer, right? Just piss off casters in all forms. Could be your own as well, could be your friends, right?
I mean, if you really want to go a full spell thief, right, I think you need more levels. Like
it's definitely something that requires higher levels, right?
It requires a higher level, but you're able to get that fantasy quite easily in the basic set.
Definitely. Right. And so with that, is there anything else we would like to add for the Arcane Mastery?
No. It's pretty clear so far. So it's like it's the representation of the raw magic, and in the skills you can see it shows it in it being so diverse but quite specialized at the same time. And yeah, I think that is Arcane.
Okay. And so with that, we have covered a total of 10 out of 12 of our masteries that will be available in the basic set for our Kickstarter of Aeons of Adventure. So the pre-launch page links are in the description below, along with all of our social media, our X, our community channels, Discord, our Facebook group, Instagram, and of course, you're watching now on this YouTube channel. So please like, subscribe, and comment, because it helps with all the algorithm things, right? And it helps to boost the channel and boost the popularity and get this video and this game into people's faces, right? And so with that, let me think, is there anything else we're going to cover? So there won't be a Tiny Tabletop next week because we are in Singapore and there is a local tabletop convention. So if you're going to Table Conquest, we will be there. If you are anywhere else in the world, you probably will never have heard of this thing, right? So we'll probably post some pictures of it, but on the weekends, we won't be having a stream. So the next Mastery review will probably be delayed to the following week, right?
Admin stuff regarding the Table Conquest, so we will be running games for it. So do let us know on somehow.
Yes, or you can just show up and if you're there, you can just try it out. We'll run a simple one shot with presets, or you could create your own character there as well.
Right. And right now we also don't have the floor plan, so I think when they release it, we also repost it to let people know about that. And
Yep.
Yeah, I think
so follow us on all of our socials for that information. Right. So with that, this has been the 15th episode of Tiny Table Talk. I have been Jon.
I'm De Yang.
We are signing out.